Do you have cash lying around in your business? If you do, you need to check out this episode. We've had Steph, the property teacher, on again, and we've chatted about how you could deploy cash from your business into residential property. Fascinating conversation. Check it out. Hey everyone, welcome to British Business with Matt Holland. I've got a new co-host today because Tom is on holiday. This is Steph, the property teacher.
Thank you.
How are you,
Thanks for
Steph?
having
You
me.
okay?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be a co-host.
Excellent. There we are. So we've just actually filmed an episode which is all about Steph's origin story, which was really good. Really great to kind of learn all about yourself, your story pivoting from teaching into residential property predominantly, and then other business ideas, entrepreneurial. So make sure you check that out if you listen. It was last week's episode. So today, obviously, Tom's on holiday, bless him, in the sun. I think he's in Portugal at the moment, so he's off doing that. We're going to be chatting. So we're going to basically run through the topics like we normally will on the typical episodes. Have you watched or listened to any of my episodes?
Yes, with Tom. Yeah.
So you know the format. So we use ChatGPT to kind of like bounce ideas off, and then we create a bit of a prompt sheet that I'm going to run down and we'll have a bit of a talk. But today, because you're a bit of an expert on property, we want to cover off the topic of whether or not business owners should pivot and go into some kind of residential property, and at what point that's appropriate when they're running the business. So they might have, I don't know, a garden centre or X or Y, maybe a coaching business. When does it make sense for them to go, do you know what, I'm going to buy a buy to let? Or maybe if they're thinking about something that's a bit slower than what they're currently doing, when the appropriate moment is and what they need to be able to do it. But first, before we get into it, we're going to go over our British business facts of the week, which is something we cover off each time we go on a topic. So more than 60% of UK landlords own property as a side investment while running another business.
Makes sense.
So I think it's obviously, this topic is something that a lot of business owners end up doing. So they either, during the journey of running a business, they put some cash away and they buy a residential buy to let, or maybe another one, or they end up buying a little commercial property or something, or maybe when they sell the business, they inherently become a landlord because the premises they were out of, they lease back to the business owner that buys the business off them. So it's quite common what we're about to talk about. But I think there's a lot of younger entrepreneurs that probably want to do it. And actually, this is a great little kind of like thought process on how you can speed that process up earlier on in your career potentially. So I'm quite interested in this because it's something that I don't own a residential buy to let. Maybe it's something I should do. So part of this will be you challenging me a little bit on saying, come on, mate, you could buy 10. Why are you not doing it?
Like, we'd do that yesterday,
Yeah,
Matt.
exactly.
What are you waiting for?
So what am I waiting for? So that's what we're thinking about. It's like the concept of turning profits into properties. So that's the basis of today's conversation. Okay. So question off the start: why do so many business owners delay thinking about property until they burn out or sell up? Why do you think it's a thing where typically there's a high proportion of business owners wait till later on? What do you think?
I think it's time for a lot of people, time to research it, time to save up, which, you can start with zero, but that's a whole other podcast. I think it's time and knowledge probably, right? Have I got time to learn? Have I got time to find the right people to help me? Have I got time to find the property? How long is it going to take me to save up this money? I think it's probably a time and a knowledge gap, time in that they don't have enough and they don't have enough knowledge to go out and do it safely. I mean, you'd have to go horribly wrong to get it wrong.
Yeah, because they're obviously in any little niche industry, there's always little horror stories you hear about where people get burned but I mean, I would imagine property seems pretty safe and stable from an outsider looking in, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, what have you heard about people being burned?
So yeah, that's a good question. So you buy a property on a whim at an auction and it's got problems with it. You don't do your due diligence. You make mistakes. You've not got the knowledge or expertise. So you kind of trip your way into it and you end up buying a bit of a problem.
And that's their fault.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's nobody's fault but theirs. Yeah. What else have you heard? What about have you heard anything about tenants?
Yeah, I mean, that's another good one. So yeah, I suppose so someone that doesn't know, tenants are going to be a problem. I mean, for me, I wouldn't say that's a major concern because I know that I would just bring in expertise to handle that for me. So that wouldn't be a barrier for me, but I can see how some people would create that as a barrier to do it.
So auctions, if you don't do your due diligence, you don't have a solicitor look over the legal pack to begin with, you don't even view the property. If you've just got money to burn, then you can crack on. Do you know Homes Under the Hammer?
Yes.
With Martin Roberts.
Yeah.
Okay. So apparently, and I know this because I co-hosted a Zoom with Martin a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And he said that about of everything that they film for Homes Under the Hammer, only about 20 to 25% of what they film makes it to TV because people fail astronomically.
Yeah.
How many people on there go over budget because they haven't got the costings right, they haven't got a full schedule of works, they do the work themselves, they don't lean on professionals.
So for people that don't know what Homes Under the Hammer is, it's basically where they film people at auction buying a property that's really run down. And there's a lot of people going there that have never bought a property before, and they just go on a whim and they end up spending more than they planned to. And it's just it can be a bit of a car crash.
I can't watch it anymore because we sit there, me and my partner film, we're like screaming at the telly, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you do this? But I suppose you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. It's very risky, particularly as well with auction. You have to pay a solicitor to look over the legal pack before you've even bought the property. You might get outbid, so that might be a waste of money. For me, it's the cost of business. And then obviously you've got to outsource. Well, I would always outsource the refurbishment now. I don't do any of that myself unless it's making it look pretty with, ornaments and painting and stuff. Tenants, why don't people get these horror stories of bad tenants, but then you can also have really bad landlords. I think it swings and roundabouts.
Initially we've gone into the reasons, the barriers, I suppose. Why would you want to buy a buy-to-let?
Cash flow.
Yeah.
And growth.
Okay.
If you can get both at the same time, you're onto a win. Yeah.
So to translate that, what we mean is the increase in value of the property.
Yeah.
So the equity, you have growth in your equity, and it's an appreciating asset.
Yes.
Whereas buying a sports car, bad idea. It depreciates.
Absolutely liability.
Exactly.
Well, that's not everyone knows the difference between an asset and a liability, and people think your own home, it's an asset because it grows up in value. That's a load of shit because it costs us money. We're paying for it all the time.
And you're not going to sell it because you live in it.
Exactly.
So
unless you do a very clever strategy which has no capital gains tax involved, and you do a live-in flip.
So is that where you hop and you move between the houses?
So you'll buy one that needs some work, you will do the work, and then you will flip it. In other words, you will do it up and sell it on, move on. If it's your own residential property, you've got no capital gains, but it's quite disruptive if you've got kids.
Yeah, I think it's very disruptive, and I think typically you see a lot of builders doing that type of thing. So they'll buy a house, they'll do it up, they'll move to a bigger one, buy it, and exactly. Whereas for business owners, you're dealing with your day-to-day, you're stressed, you've got people not turning up, you've got cash flow problems, you've got X or Y. So your business needs to be in a stable position, I would say. And then if you're in a fortunate position where you're able to draw a good amount of dividends from your limited company or take remuneration if you're a sole trader or what have you, you can then siphon that off into a limited company. Obviously, we can't give tax advice, but typically the setup, I would presume, is into a property company, and then you buy it. You want to do buy-to-lets via that vehicle, typically. Is that?
Yeah, you can do. I mean, obviously, I'm not a financial advisor, and I think everybody needs to speak to their accountant. And in fact, my advice would be, obviously, business owners will have an accountant naturally, but try to speak to a property-specific accountant. Right, I'm not saying have two, but if you can have one work with the other, because I can tell you the difference in the expertise is astronomical if you get a good one.
I think accountants, I agree with that, and I tell you why. Because some accountants, it's a very broad, non-proactive kind of stance back. They don't necessarily proactively suggest creative ideas to solve your issues further down the line. So so what you're saying there is you want a specialist that deals with people that do buy-to-lets, either privately or via a limited company, and then they can give you specific advice. So is that the foundationary step, getting really good professional advice?
Knowing because where do we start? That's a whole probably other podcast in itself. But to know what structure to buy in, whether it's your personal name, I've got some in mine, my partner has, we've got some together, and we've got some in limited companies. You need to know what is the best setup. I wasn't necessarily given the right advice at the beginning, but a lot of people say go straight to limited company. Well, that might be fine if that's the right financial advice for you. It depends on your situation.
Yeah, my understanding is it depends on your personal income levels and things like your personal tax bandings, but take advice from an accountant, basically.
Definitely.
So typically, if someone's a business owner right now and they're thinking, oh, this is quite an interesting topic, I've got some excess profits that I'd like to maybe pay out to myself and then buy a buy-to-let. What is the first step? Like, where would do you just go on Rightmove and go, I fancy that, I'll buy that?
No.
How do you identify a good opportunity?
Well, first of all, that's like a can of worms question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Right. Where do you start? Well, you come to me first of all, and you have a chat with me. A 30-minute free call. Now, what you have to think about long term, if it's something you want to build up over time. So, and why? Do I want steady cash flow and capital growth so I can cash in, 20 years, 30 years down the line, or pass it on to my kids, whatever? Or do I want to build capital, i.e. chunks of money? So that's where you need to start. It's strategy first, area second. So if I said I want cash flow, I want to buy to let. Okay, that's great. I want to buy to let. I then need to find an area where that strategy works. So don't go to the area first. So I start with the strategy. I find an area where that strategy works. Then I'll look for the property. There's no point in saying, oh, I want a cash flow. I want a cash flow strategy of buy to lets. So I'm going to go to, I don't know, Alderley Edge, buy a property for 300-400 grand and rent it out. Your cash flow is going to be lower. The property is going to be higher in price. So strategy first, area second,
so
then the property.
That would be, so say my strategy is I want to build a portfolio of properties over a longer period of time. Not too worried about the cash flow. It just needs to be self-sufficient. I don't need to take cash out. That strategy, what you're saying is you kind of want to be identifying locations or areas of the country where the rent yield is pretty decent in relation to the purchase price of the property.
Yeah, because rental yield is good. It doesn't tell you everything, but it's a good place to start because you can quickly start to filter out, well, that's given me 5-6%, which is good, but that's given me 9, 10, 11 to 12% there, and I'm going to focus there. Because there are people sometimes equate cheaper properties with crappy areas or rundown areas, and that's not always the case. You can have really good solid areas where they'll rent really well, you'll get some good growth in it, and it will still because cash flow is important even if you're not going to take it out of the business. And I don't recommend people do that immediately. If they can build it up, keep money in that business and reinvest it, you don't necessarily have to take the money out, you let it grow. But if you can get both, if you can get a bit of cash flow and a bit of growth, I think you're onto a double win there.
Yeah, because if you want to go again and go for a second, you want some positive cash flow, so you're accruing a bit of money on the side.
And you want good positive cash flow as well. Some people come to me and they have repayment mortgages that are buy to lets. Well, that's fine if it's a massive, a long-term growth strategy. Most of mine are on interest only, so I can get the higher cash flow.
And then my understanding is you're gaining equity in the properties via appreciation of the asset. Right.
Rather than paying off the balance like you would on your own residential home.
Which is why in the previous episode you were talking about how you're cashing out, selling a few of them now because you've appreciated. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and how much time does it take? So say I'm running a business, I would say I'm relatively busy, unfortunately, however you look at it. I've got 2 young kids, married. It's a busy life, I think. If I wanted to pivot into property and have it as a bit of a side hustle, what kind of time cost am I looking at in say the initial 3-4 months in maybe working with a coach, someone like yourself, identifying a property or identifying the goals, then identifying the property, transacting on it, completing it, getting a tenant in, and then I've got my steady cash flow coming in. What kind of time frames does that take typically on average, and also what time is incurred by the individual?
I would say working with me on average about 8 months. And some people might be able to fast track you, but I don't, because I want my mentees, my coaches, my learners, whatever you want to call them, I want them to go out and practice first. It's like when people start doing stocks or trading and they have to do like practice trades. I kind of see it like that because I don't want people to rush. I want people to do it safely. So from month 1 to month 8, if you do exactly what I tell you to do, then you could have it in rent. But to go back to your question about how much time do they have to put into it, how long is a piece of string?
Because the comparison I was thinking about and drawing upon is like I'm in the process of trying to buy other businesses at the moment, and a part of the process of that for me is reps and sets on just going through the initial steps of like, right, contacting a business, whether or not they want to sell, then talking to them about it, then asking them what their valuation parameters are, making an offer, then, and you've got to do all that before you then, you want to do all that and agree a rough offer before you then progress to due diligence and incurring a load of costs. So I'd imagine it's similar in a way. You don't want to really, do you get your clients to almost go and look at lots of properties and go and familiarize themselves? How do you, what?
Yeah, I do, but ideally in the area, we spend a lot of time up front doing the area due
Research.
diligence,
That's
yeah.
fascinating.
But then I want them to go out and view properties and view them critically, not just as an amateur. The amateurs walk in and they go, oh yeah, it needs a
Lovely,
rewire, or it might bit of plastering, new bathroom, get rid of the brown swirly carpets. For me, the smellier the better, because it gives you more leverage for negotiation. But then I want them to go out and inspect the outside of the property. I want them to be in a multitude of houses to be able to go in. I give them a checklist, quite an extensive one, but I almost want them to get to a point, and it takes time, but to walk into a property without that and go, boom, I know exactly what needs to be done.
I imagine a part of that is as well having the confidence to challenge agents, because agents can be a bit of a...
Agents can be dickheads. Sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine.
You're right.
That's my opinion, because I've been through the process of leasing commercial property. I've been the process of, we're looking to buy commercial property at the moment. That's something we're looking to do within our business, and it's I feel like a skill that you have to develop, from my experience so far, is actually knowing how to communicate with these agents. And obviously you want to be respectful and polite and kind, but also they're probably not reciprocating in the way that I've just said. They're being very commercially minded, and they know what game they're playing. So there's a bit of an educational piece there on understanding how to liaise with and have the dialogue with these guys.
You're right. I mean, what's been your experience then?
I've had a real mixed bag. I've come across agents who I've got to the site and I've spoken to them, and I'm asking questions. I've got no fucking clue. So I'm like, right, well, great. Well, you're a waste of space then.
Yeah.
Because they've not done their due diligence in terms of, they've not looked at the property part. They've not, it's Fred in the office that speaks to the, it's like, right, okay, great. So they know nothing. So that's some of the scenario. Some scenarios, they might be the opposite. You might be asking questions. They know the answers, but they're like, why do you want to know that?
Like almost like skeptical of you.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know whether that's just a human interaction thing where it's like, oh, this guy's young, why is he asking that, or what have you. And then I suppose it's similar to just business in general, but agents, they seem like a bit of a particular breed. I'm not sure. There's an air of arrogance I find sometimes.
With some of them, I mean, you're right. I say, oh, they can be dickheads, but I can be a dickhead as well, to be fair.
We all can.
But you're right. It's how you approach them. At the end of the day, if there's an agent selling a property, they're going to be making money out of that property. So they want the highest possible price that they can get for that property.
Yeah.
So when I'm going in and I'm like, oh, that's rising damp, and they say, no, it's condensation. And I'm like, it's not, it's rising down. That's when they start to piss me off. Right. And I would say building a rapport, building a relationship with them is important. And them just knowing, you treat them like the experts.
Because one of the things that concerns me, because I've done a reasonable amount of kind of tire kicking, I suppose, so far. We've actually offered on a few commercial properties. We have actually progressed to legals on a couple, and then we found problems by looking at the legal part via the solicitor and stuff. And this is commercial I'm talking about. Covenants and just problems, basically. It's kind of, I've been worried or concerned about viewing lots of properties and the agent almost getting pissed off that you kind of, why is he viewing, why is he not buying one? You don't care about that?
Not anymore.
And do you have relationships with particular agents where they now feed properties into you? Is that, so you've...
Yeah, because when they know that whether I'm buying them for myself, I'm working with my mentees, or whether, we are finding the deals and selling them on, they know that I'm good for it. But it was tricky at the beginning because I had no social proof. I was like, bring me a property, bro, I'll buy it, or I'll look at it first, I'll give you a decision straight away. And they wouldn't. But as soon as you start transacting with the same agents, or even if it's not, it's agents in that area, and you say, well, actually, I've got that one down the road and blah, blah, and it's rented with them, and, or I'm selling this one, for example, if you're flipping, I want to sell it with you. And, when they start to realize you've got that proof, that social proof behind you, that's when they'll start ringing you. But a lot of people in the property education space will encourage people to get what we call direct. Have you heard of direct to vendor?
No. In the buying business sector, yes.
Yeah, so it's probably similar.
Yeah.
Let's get direct to the seller rather than the agent.
Cut the agent
If it's
out.
on with an agent, it's unprofessional to cut them out. But if you can, there are different strategies you can implement. I teach some of them, but it is quite time consuming, and that's something you've got to think about if you've got another job or a business.
Yeah.
But there are strategies you can employ to get direct to the vendor, and actually you end up getting a better deal because you might be able to offer them a bit more. They're not paying an estate agent fee, and you can actually help create a bit of a win-win. We're not in this to like exploit people or rip them off, but there are people who might be on the cusp of repossession, and it's like, well, if you get repossessed, that's it, you'll never get lending again, so let's come up with a solution where we can help you. You might lease the property off them so they own the property infinitely, that they still own the property, we just manage it and make money off it. There are different things that you can do. There's so many.
And I was doing a bit of research before having you on for the previous episode and today, and it's the property market is vast, so it's very difficult for us to run through the different because there's commercial property questions there and stuff. So it seems complex, which I suppose when you're not knowledgeable, you don't have the expertise, it can be a bit overwhelming. It's like if you were to ask me questions about online retail, for example, that's what I have expertise in, so it's different. But one of the questions that I think a lot of people will have in their mind straight away is, how much cash do you need to buy a property?
Oh, I say everyone asks me that, but do you know what? I'm going to be like super a pain in the arse here and say you don't need any money at all. Now, I'm not saying you can get into it, for £0 because you can't.
Yeah.
But technically, you can start with nothing.
Yeah.
And you can raise money.
Because what you're saying is you could go and approach a property owner and say, can I lease your property off and I want to do subletting? And there's things that you can do like that.
That's like a lease option, but you'd still need money to get into it with the legals. But let's say let's say you're in a 9-to-5, or let's say, you're a business owner, you want to build something up, but you've got no money. Where'd you start if you've got zero? Okay, well, we need to build the capital part. Well, how do we do that in property? We flip. So we buy, refurb, and we sell it, and we get a big chunk of money back. Right, how the hell do you do that if you've got zero money? Well, you leverage other people. Right. You find people with money, and everyone always, all my mentees go, I don't know anyone with money. Bullshit. I say this all the time. There are people with money out there. You've just got to make yourself visible enough so that they come to you. So you could loan all of the money. You could use a bridging loan, you could use investor money for the deposit, and, for the refurb or what have you. There are different creative ways you can do this. Get a property. In theory, it sounds easy. Flip it, get the capital out of it, pay your investor back, then take that capital and put it into a buy-to-let. But in so much as how much do you start with?
So typically,
depends on the area.
Yeah, it depends on the area. It depends on the person, because if they're employed or they've got X or Y going on, they might not have it, and so it's complex. But for our audience, they're probably business owners. So they may have access to cash via the business and be able to draw down. So in that scenario, they'll probably be looking more at a typical buy-to-let scenario, I would say. Perhaps
30 to 50k.
Yeah,
I'd say is a good amount. So let's say you buy a property for 100k.
Yeah.
Obviously you've done your due diligence. You know how much it's going to cash flow and all of that. It's in a great area, whatever. 25% deposit, 5% stamp, bit on legals, bit on the refurb. You can be all in for about 30 to 50k.
Yeah. And just a question, this is purely my own interest. Like, if I had that 30 to 50k, but I didn't have the time to want to do the legwork myself, but wanted to buy to let, are the people like yourself, I don't know if this is something you do, where you offer a service where you handle the purchasing, the acquiring, finding the opportunity, and then do you charge percentages on that? How does that typically work within the industry?
That is actually called property sourcing, and there are, and I will tell, like, for everyone listening here, for God's sake, do your due diligence. You've got to know how to do that due diligence on the property. Not every property sourcer has a clue what they're doing.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a danger zone that way.
It's a huge red flag thing.
So really you need to educate yourself first,
At least have some basic knowledge, or find somebody like me who you can book an hour with and say, I found this property with this sourcing agent, or this sourcing agent's found me this property. They'll go through the whole process. It's typically around 3 to 5 grand for a buy to let. They've got to be registered with the ombudsman, the redress scheme. They've got to have the same level of compliancy as an estate agent. So it costs them a couple of grand to get set up. A lot of them go on courses for like 1-2 days and then think they can just like buy them, like find properties like bloody Donald Trump. But do a bit of the due diligence yourself, because there are people out there charging their sourcing fees. They can't even do the due diligence. It's actually quite, for a regulated industry, it's actually quite scary. So book a power hour with somebody with the property in mind and say, right, this is what I think. What do you think? And 9 times out of 10, I will rip that deal apart.
Interesting, and then hopefully rebuild it with them potentially.
I mean, they don't have to be on a 6-month mentorship with me for me to help them. But what worries me is that there are people out there charging those massive fees. But to answer your question, there are people who'll do what's called turnkey. Now, there are quite a lot of very reputable people. So my advice would be, if that's what you're going to do, if you're going to outsource it, and we've bought, I would say 4 or 5 sourced properties, especially when I was teaching and I didn't have the time. Just make sure, obviously, still go and view the property, still get your survey and so on. Try to find or ask that sourcing agent what other deals they've done. Get on the phone to their past clients and get some testimonials and have a little look at deals that they've sold.
Interesting. Because you want that. You want to make sure that they're legitimate.
Absolutely.
Because if you're going to part ways with cash or cut them in, or it's
you want their redress scheme number, you want all their details, you want to know their insurance certificates. Really, really look at them in depth.
Fascinating. So obviously I've looked at commercial property a little bit for us to buy and acquire via a prop co, and something that we're probably going to go down that route. And obviously, I think there's different tax things, but you need to speak to your accountant about that. Yields, that's something I wanted to ask you about. So what for you is a typical kind of threshold or point where you go, this is a good yield in terms of percentage on capital deployed? What is that a thing that is that something you not look at, or is it more cash flow related?
For me and Phil starting, it was always cash flow, because yield is good in the sense that it can tell you, you can get the yield for an area and you go, actually, this is quite high yield. Let's do some more due diligence on this area. Yield tells you how hard the rent is working against the market value of the property. So I want something at least above 8% minimum. However, what yield didn't tell me to begin with was how many properties I would need to be financially free. It didn't tell me how many years it would take to get my money back out of that property.
Which is why you focus on cash.
I focus on ROI, return on investment. So for the first property that we bought, this is going to sound mental, it was free. It was a free house, whereas the yield was like 6%. So it's like, but hang on, I put all my money in, did the work, refinanced it, pulled all my money out and some. So I've had all money in, money out plus profit. So asset for free, cash flow for life, but it's a low yield. So you've got to look at ROI as well as yield.
It's such a complicated industry. I feel very comfortable doing what I'm doing, to be honest with you.
See, I couldn't do what you do. I couldn't buy a business. I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Wow. I mean, what we've done there is we've like skimmed the surface. We could talk for 3 hours. I mean, if someone's listening to this and they are thinking, I'd like to maybe have some cash flow outside of my business, money coming in, obviously money going out as well, but have an asset that's appreciating in value. If you were to break it down to 3 very basic, simple steps, what would those 3 steps be in terms of starting the process of thinking about going into residential property?
So probably, like I said earlier, strategy first. So if they want cash flow, that's the strategy. Find an area where that strategy works, then find a property. Strategy, area, property, in that order. I mean, I have people messaging me saying, hey, can you help me? I've found this property on Rightmove. I'm like, well, we need to work. You've gone back to front. The property is the last thing we look at.
And I would add there's probably a prerequisite to those 3 steps, which is you need to improve your knowledge, or get a mentor, or speak to someone with expertise within the industry, because otherwise you can follow those 3 steps, but without the knowledge or expertise, it's going to be very difficult 3 steps to make potentially.
Spot on. And I think if you do want a mentor, find somebody who's doing successfully what you want to do, rather than just, there are a lot of people online saying, hey, do this, hey, do that, and you don't know them from Adam. They might have a good reputation, I don't know.
Well, this is the problem with today's society. There's so many people that are they look good online, but are they legit? So it's
that's
very
it. There's a lot of hype, isn't there, Matt? And I don't know, do you see it in your space? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, e-commerce, it's very, so like we spoke off camera briefly about how the property industry, there's obviously people that they're portraying a very different lifestyle to what they actually have in reality on social media and stuff like that. It's the same in the e-commerce game. There's a guy that I have interacted with who 3-4 months ago was just starting off, and now he's selling courses in e-commerce. And I'm like, I've been 10 years into the game and I'm yet to launch a course. I probably never will, because it's not something that interests me. But it's obviously his tactic to growing a business. It's more about selling this course that has very little mustard behind it, if that makes sense. So I think it's very difficult for people to identify mentors, actually.
Especially since a lot of people, like similar in property as to the guy you've just outlined there, a lot of people have the education arm to build their capital, to inject, which is fine. But for me, I make up most of my money from property, not necessarily the education. The education stuff is just the icing on the cake. And I don't want to do a disservice to myself, but I'm probably one of the cheapest out there, because I think the barrier to entry needs to be, I'm selective as to who I work with, but the barrier to entry needs to be lower. But it's very similar to he's obviously making more money doing that than he is the actual e-commerce. But it's I think in social media is like the highlight reel, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and people, it's interesting. Well, that fantastic episode but we've got the ChatGPT question of the week, so it's chucked this out, which is a great question for me, but I'm going to ask you about it as well from a slightly different angle. So the question is, and it's for me because my business is different to yours. So would you rather invest £100,000 back into your business, or buy a buy-to-let, or invest into a buy-to-let property, and why? So I'll answer that first, and then I'm going to reframe it for you. So I, at the moment, would probably invest 100k back into my business, my businesses. And the reason why is because right now I know that if I were to deploy 100k of capital back into the business, typically I know what my net profitability and cash generation is going to be, and it's a safe bet. It's what I know. But the counter to that is like the longevity of that and diversification, and the risk my business might go bust at some point in the future, etc. So I can see how it would be logical. So a better question is, what proportion of your net profit, of my net profit, would I want to pivot off? And it may be 10% or something like that. That's what I would do. So for yourself, to reframe that, if you had 100 grand right now of cash to invest in property, how would you do it? Would you go down the route of lots of buy to let? Would you go down the route of developing? Because that's something that we touched on in the last episode. Where would you distribute that 100k right now?
For me right now, development. But if I was just starting out, I would probably I could take 100k and put that into 3 or 4 buy-to-lets. I would leverage the debt. I would mortgage them. I wouldn't just buy the cash outright.
Cash flow for yourself by doing that, whereas the development is a much longer play. And the reason why you're doing the development option in the answer to that question is because you've got the cash flow already.
Yeah, I can afford to. Yeah. And I've got the time as well. Whereas when I was in teaching, I just wanted cash flow. To get out. Yeah. But, for a business owner, if they had 100k, do I put it into a buy-to-let, or do I put it back into the business? It just depends on the situation. What's going to give you the highest return on your money? Yeah. And can you split it? Can you take 30k and just do a ready-made type of buy-to-let with no refurb, and then put 70 into your business? It depends on what's going to give you the best return.
If it was the question, so say if we were £1 million net profit in the last 12 months, something like that, well, I can do 100 grand. Yeah. So it's about proportional risk in a way for people without the knowledge. It's like, what can you deploy?
So what are you putting into commercial then? 100k? You need more than that.
Yeah, probably. It depends on the property, because we looked at one recently for 1.2 million, and it was I think that property was overvalued, so we've not proceeded on it.
What premises are you looking at for
We're
commercial?
looking at warehousing. That's something that we want to
Brilliant.
invest in. So,
okay. And you know about, you can like siphon them off, you can put them into sections, you can...
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
So commercial and warehousing space is something I'm very interested in,
Yeah.
Which is an entirely...
That's
It's
something that
fascinating.
I learnt about recently with a guy. I'll plug him. I did a mastermind with him in London about a month ago. John Howard, property developer. He's done about 4,000 transactions. He's fantastic. He's going to be on my podcast soon, which is exciting.
Cool. Yeah.
And he talked about warehouses.
Is he more commercial than residential? Then?
Yeah.
Yes, that'd be quite an interesting conversation.
He did a big block of flats in Ipswich, and they called it the Wine Rack, if anyone wants to Google it. It's massive development. And he works very much with the council and so on. He's brilliant. But yeah, he talked about warehouses, and I think if there's a way that you can get them, rather than just one big warehouse, you can section them off.
I think smaller units like 2,000 to 3,000 square feet are great. I think the bigger stuff, unless you're going to roll into them yourselves and operate your business out of it, it's the yields aren't, or the cash generation's not overly great, and obviously you've got much bigger risk because it's one tenant versus 10 or 15 if you've got lots of smaller units. So yeah, well see what happens with that. We're working on it.
You have to keep me updated on that
one.
Do,
yeah. Or we may pivot into residential after this conversation.
Well, you know where I am, honestly, and it's I don't know, there's swings and roundabouts. Commercial, you lease it, that it's FRI lease, isn't it? So you don't have to worry about it. So you know, you're probably on the right track with that. But then with residential,
and I think that's the key thing, is actually it's what's right for you as the individual, or you in your business or your personal circumstances at the time. And if you've not got that commercial expertise and you understand how commercial leases work, then residential is probably a much more safer or relatable option.
Safer, and the value differently as well.
Very, very differently. Yeah. So we'll close the episode off there. It's been great having you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Really enjoyable. And if anyone's got any questions about residential property, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram or Facebook as Steph the Property Teacher. That's Steph with a PH. Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn as Steph the Property Teacher, or you can go onto my ever-developing website that I change all the time, property-school.com.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and hopefully everyone's enjoyed the episode. If you've got any questions as well, stick them in the comments, and I'll direct Steph towards that in the future when the episode launches.
Lovely. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.